issues, education, business, and innovation. EIN TV, educative, innovative, and nature centric. Afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining the conversation from. This is EIN TV, and my name is Ediong Senyanen Dunobong. Of course, you know that every Thursday and, of course, every other day, as the schedule permits, we have our environmental resort where we talk about address issues pertaining to the environment around climate change, and, of course, how we could contribute our quota to seeing that we have a safer and, of course, better environment to be fit to the next generation. And so today is not different. We are here to talk environment. We are here to share our experience, our stories, and of course, this space is does not limit its barrier free. Anywhere in the world, anywhere in the globe that you are, we can always connect for you to share your thoughts. Once again, welcome to Environmental Resort on EINT. My name is Ediong Senyen Ndundobong. Well, today on the show, we'll be talking about something very, very important. Earlier in the year, about I think 2nd of February, we had the World Wetland Day, and of course, mangrove is connected or with a wetland. And so today, I find it very pertinent. In the course of my engagement, I discovered a lady who has been doing something very phenomenal far away East Africa. And of course, you know that Africa contribute very minimal to global warming. I think about 3.6% of the global average. And of course, but then we suffer more from the impact of climate change. And young people across Africa are doing their best to see that we protect our environment, we conserve our ecosystem, and we are doing a lot to see that what is happening is being curtailed to a very, curtailed to some level of extent that we can manage to survive. Because I normally say, like I do say, that nature has a way of taking care of itself. So if you do not take care of nature, nature will take care of itself, and we may not be there because nature may have to perhaps eliminate us to see that it takes care of itself. And like I do say, taking care of nature means taking care of ourselves for the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, to join us today on this very important conversation is a lady I get to admire her work so much, and she's been doing phenomenally well in East Africa, Kenya to be precise. And she's joining us today from Mombasa, Kenya. Her name is Joy Koech. I hope I got the name right. Joy is a climate activist and the co-founder of uh, Blue Aid Organization. I believe I got that right. And she's been doing a lot of work around the mangrove restoration. She's currently involved in the restoration of the mangrove ecosystem in Mombasa, Kenya. And it's a privilege to have Joy speak to us today on the topic restoration in a changing climate. Joy, welcome to Environmental Resort.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for having me. And my name is Joyce Koech.
Okay,
Yeah.
Joy Koech. I got that right
Yes,
now. How is
yes,
Kenya
yes.
today?
Kenya is great. Kenya is a wonderful country, and so Mombasa specifically has been beautiful. Mombasa is usually known to be very hot. But right now we are receiving the rains, and
Oh,
it
wow.
has cooled the city a little bit and the entire place. Yeah.
I like you when you talk in fascinating terms about your country and where you're living. I give that to you, Joy.
Oh,
So
so yeah.
let's hit the ball rolling. We will start on something not very connected to the conversation, but something that inspired the conversation because I know that there must there must have been a push, to climate advocacy space where you are taking
Yeah.
climate actions in diverse realms. So, Joy, what was the motivation behind you becoming a climate activist?
Um, First of all, I am an educator. I am a teacher by profession. And so how I started was this journey started way back in 2007. Sorry, 2017 actually. That's when I started getting involved in activism, but it was at a very small scale.
Oh wow.
It started picking up way in 2009 when a couple of friends of mine now who are now the founders of the organization, Blue Earth Organization, when we noticed with a lot of concern the plastic the damage that plastic pollution has had in our environment. We live in, I personally, we live in Mombasa. We are close to the ocean, and we know how the ocean is important, especially for the coast of Mombasa. The people of Mombasa depend on the coast for the ocean for fish and so many others. Mombasa is one of the tourist destinations in Kenya. We have
Oh
beautiful
wow.
coast beaches and so when we saw that, plastic is really damaging our country and that, we embarked in small little activities of beach cleanup and started creating awareness about um, plastics and the harmful it has on our environment. And so while we were still in that journey, you meet other people that are also passionate about the environment and it now led us to now coming into activism. That was in 2020, just immediately the pandemic. Actually, my organization is really small. We're only 3 years old. We formed Blue Earth Organization in March, just before the pandemic. And
Mm.
so we were really worried that is it going to, what are we going to do? We are in a lockdown now. What kind of activities are we going to do for the environment? So during COVID, we did a lot of advocacy online, and we did a lot of activities, just talking online about the effects of how important it is to like take care of our environment. And then in 2020, after the lockdown, we started getting into activism and connecting with other activists around Kenya. And while we were still in ocean conservancy, then now we also discovered about mangroves. I used to know about mangroves, but I did not know the value of this ecosystem.
Oh wow.
So we started, just going into, I started reading about mangroves, and I decided, because we wanted to start planting, the only people that could give us so much information about mangroves are Kenya Forest Service. So we went to their offices, they gave us information, and they have this initiative called Adopt a Site. And because there's a large area of mangroves that were lost in Kenya. So because mangroves only grow in warm and the coastal regions of different parts of the world, and so we are fortunate to have mangroves in our country, but it only covers a small little area of Mombasa and Lamu and Kwale County. So in Mombasa we have a small little patch, and the largest coverage of mangroves are in Lamu, but the ones in Mombasa had been cut down due to by the local communities, because mangroves are also a source of hardwood. So you'll find that communities are cutting them down to build their houses, because mangrove, the wood itself are resilient to like pests, the ones that eat the wood. So they're really good for like even making the small canoes for going fishing and making their
Mm.
houses. And so they used to cut them down and for firewood as well. So Kenya Forest, in order to increase the cover of mangroves in Mombasa, decided to come with initiatives that would motivate people to plant more mangroves. And so they came with this initiative called Adopt a Site, where an organization, a CBO, or a group of people, a company, could adopt a site and be responsible for that site or plant a certain amount of mangroves. And so that is how we started. And our first project from 2020, December of 2020 till December of 2021, we planted 10,000 mangroves within
Oh wow.
that year. And it was such an achievement because we were small. Blue Earth Organization is formed by 3 women, and so just being a women-led organization and just indulging into just environmentalism, something that we didn't know about, and just climate activism as well. So we just dived into that, and it has been that since then. And we've just been advocates of just this beautiful ecosystem.
Beautiful. You find your passion, and you eventually heading headlong to see that you achieve so much for nature. Thank you so very much, Joy. Okay, so let's get to talk more about the little story, because you've talked about how you got to discover about mangrove and the things you're doing.
Yeah.
And I want to believe there was a preceding story how the fishing communities were coping with earning a living from the mangroves area, because we understand that mangroves be a breeding ground for fish where we have the periwinkles, the crayfish and stuff. So how was it before you ventured into the area, and how is it now? The fishing as a source of livelihood of the people in Mombasa.
Absolutely. Okay, the area that we specifically adopted was a very sensitive area because it is next to um a train station that was just built a couple of years ago. And there are a lot of developments just happening near this small little site of where we specific, and that is why we specifically chose this area, because first of all, the fishermen had been, um, you see, the mangrove ecosystem is very sensitive, and so with
Hmm,
the building of
absolutely.
the train station just next to this ecosystem, all that vibration and all this construction going on, it pushes the fish farther into the ocean. So you'll find that the fishermen have to like go deeper into the ocean in order to retrieve fish.
Hmm.
And these are people who don't have, like life jackets. They're just, ordinary people using small little canoes. And so this mangrove ecosystem, of course, was affected with the building, with the infrastructure that was going all around. And then also next to these ecosystems, there's a bridge that just recently is about to finish. So this entire ecosystem is really disrupted, and now the fishermen do not have a source of income because it becomes difficult for them to depend on the
So,
ecosystem. But right now, what we do is that we support them through, because we are also trying to encourage them not to cut mangroves and sell them for firewood. And so what we do is that they grow the mangrove seedlings, the small, tiny little seedlings. And then what we do is that we buy the seedlings from them and then we plant with them. And that is how they are able to get an income for their families.
oh,
And right
oh,
now, yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so we buy the seedlings from them and then we grow the seedlings. And so now the ecosystems is coming back. The mangroves are growing, and the fishermen are able to now sell prawns. And yeah, that now the ecosystem is coming back to life right now because we have encouraged also other organizations just to come in. We have brought young children, schools, companies just coming to restore the ecosystem. So that has been so encouraging to see.
Fantastic. The idea of integrating different components is quite ingenious. How they you get to pay the farmers or the fisher folks who are now growing mangrove seedlings for money instead of destroying
Yeah,
the mangroves themselves. That's quite ingenious, and I
yeah.
give it to you and your team. And
Thank you.
I thank you specifically for being so caring to nature. So, ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen, this
thank
is
you.
environmental research on ANTV. And my guest today is Joy Koech from Mombasa, Kenya. And Joy has been doing a very great job around the restoration of mangrove ecosystem in Mombasa. And so far, and they've done more than 10,000 mangroves in restoration, their restoration activities. So I would like to say very big thank you to Joy and our team in Kenya. Meanwhile, Joy, let's get to talk about youth involvement, because we talk about sustainability, and sustainability basically looks into the now and the future. And when we
Yeah,
look at the future, we become the old people in the future while we have young people. So how
Mm,
involved are the young people in Mombasa? Let's talk about your country right now, because I know your activities is around Mombasa basically. So
yes.
how involved are young people? How encouraged are there to venture into ecosystem restoration, whether a mangrove restoration or wetland restoration, however they want to, or um, restorative aquaculture, whatever it is they're doing around the environment. How encouraged are the young people over there?
Well, th- you know, the young people are getting it. Young people are very passionate about their future, but sometimes there are obviously some few setbacks. When I was doing beach cleanups, I remember there was a group of so many young people, and the place that we were cleaning was a place that had been degraded years and years and years, and there was plastic all over, and like the place was really in a very terrible state. And with all that, the work that needed to be done, I needed young people to come in and get involved in solving the problems that we have as a society. Because, as you said, young people are the ones who are inheriting the future, and they see that the future is, it's not looking good. So th- th- it's now that I'm seeing a lot of people getting so passionate, and I think the group of people that are the most passionate, when I take them, are usually, I love taking um people in high school, and also like I that this is the group of people that get passionate about, like high schoolers. They are passionate, they are so creative, they are so innovative, and I feel so encouraged every time I take them. I see them just being so involved in it, and loving doing it. I feel so encouraged. And so the participation of the young people has been really great, and it has been really encouraging to see. Um, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I am happy young people are getting involved in the process, because
Yeah.
there are some instances you find young people would do give a lackadaisical attitude towards the conservation of environment, and
They are.
with a
They are.
with a very with a very poor
Um,
mindset of not
yeah.
minding what will happen in the future.
There are those ones, of course. I can, I cannot. I'm not saying that all of them are like that, but um, you don't need a handful of people to do it. You just need
Mm.
one person or two persons that are
To
dedicated
create a
to it,
change.
and those ones can change the world. Yeah.
Of course, I agree with you totally. Okay, so
Yeah.
we get to talk about the traits, because I know all of these things do not happen without traits, without concern. So, what are the traits that you feel that the mangrove ecosystem is being felt in Mombasa, Kenya? Like, what are those things strengthening the mangrove ecosystem? If you were to suggest to the government, if you were to suggest to the county leadership, what are those things you would say they should do or put in place to see that the mangrove ecosystem in your location is being taken care of?
Um, you see, Mombasa is still a very it's a developing city, so there are a lot of developments, and I live in an island. So Mombasa is an island, really. So the island is surrounded by mangroves. So the newest bridge that is being built, um, they cut down such a huge area of mangroves just to make
Oh,
way
wow.
for the bridge. You can imagine the crabs, the prawns, and all the biodiversity that used to dwell in that area. So now all of them are displaced, and the communities that used to live around the place, I now have to like look for another source of income or try to survive. Um, so the infrastructure and development is harming the mangrove ecosystem, and we've been really pushing for governments to, of course, get finances on how these communities can be compensated, and also on how and push this. For example, in our country, they're called Kenha. They are the ones who are building highways and bridges, to invest in this ecosystem and to make sure that what they have destroyed is being restored back. And so those are the things that we try to push the government in, and also policies that protect the entire ecosystem, because
mm,
they are such unsung heroes. I can tell you for fact, like most of young people, like I we planted mangroves the other Saturday, and I brought in 10 young people, and we were, and also I also have to involve the community and 10 community members, and we were able to plant 1,000 seedlings. And I think the one thing that I would like is, for the government to protect the entire ecosystem, because I feel like most of the time we overlook the value of mangroves, even though we know that it can contribute so much to the ecosystem. So like when we say about mitigation and adaptation, and fighting climate change, and minimizing or emissions, or cutting down emissions, mostly we don't see mangroves in that list. We're seeing renewable energy, which is great. We're seeing a lot of innovations, but also I am such a big advocate, because this entire ecosystem, if you look at the value of it, we're able to solve like almost 8 SGDs. We're able to solve climate change. We're able to solve zero poverty, because it is a source of food. We're able to solve gender equality. In my group of communities, I have 6 women who are able to have an income just with the activities that we're doing. So gender equality, we have zero poverty. You understand? People are able to earn from mangroves. We have climate change. We have what else? Just purifying water. People don't know that mangroves are also, this ecosystems purifies water. So just being involved in like policies, and when we talk about the NDC, the nationally determined contributions, we're not seeing mangroves as also at the top of solving the climate crisis, especially in Mombasa. And so these are the things that we push for the county government to put. If we are really, if we as the people of Mombasa were to like have, like we are trying to solve the climate change using renewable energy, or having greener cities, planting trees, then mangroves also should be heavily be there, because right now the president of Kenya has given a directive of planting 50 billion trees. We're not seeing mangroves being included in there. But yeah, so these are the things that I need people to talk about. We need to put mangroves also as a powerful climate action.
so at this point, if I address it to be a mangrove advocate, I would not be wrong, Joy, because
Absolutely.
because the way you are talking, and then talking about your NDCs, how serious is President is it Ruto, right? Ruto, how serious is it with the NDC? Do you think it's possible for him to? Do you think he's ambitious enough to achieve the current Kenyan NDCs?
Well, of course, he's very vocal about climate change, which is really great for a president who just recently come in. I feel really encouraged that he's constantly addressing the issues that we're having, even with the drought that we're experiencing. It's important that we just don't say, the drought in Garissa, and we know exactly what is contributing to that.
Mm,
Climate
mm,
change is contributing. Like I come from the Horn of Africa. Somalia is dying, and parts of other places of Kenya. And as you said, we contribute so little to the climate crisis, but we
crisis,
are
yeah.
the ones who are suffering the most. So, of course, he is very vocal, but even as people, as the county government, we need to be more ambitious. And sometimes I feel it's just the talk, the talk, the talk, the talk, but a lot of action is missing. A lot of action is missing. Like we are saying 50 billion trees, but we're not seeing people really intentional about planting 50 billion trees. So
Mm.
there is uh, a lot of beautiful words being said, a lot of beautiful plans being planned,
But you
but
want you want to see them
still,
being converted into actions, right?
absolutely, like absolutely. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so Joy is advocating for less of the talk and more of the actions. And Joy is a
Yeah.
fantastic fellow joining us today on environmental research from Mombasa, Kenya. And she's been talking about the restoration of mangrove in a changing climate. And of course, what we do here, that we do our very best to conserve our environment. I would like to say a very big thank you to our partners, the people who's always made sure that we have this conversation week in, week out. I would like to say a very big thank you to Blue Green Initiative for Sustainable Development, Climate and Sustainable Development Network of Nigeria, and Pan African Climate Justice Alliance. A very big thank you to them for always making sure we come on air to contribute our quota to the fight against climate change. Today, I have with me Joy Koech, and Joy is a mangrove advocate. I just gave her that name today because I know elsewhere I may have to even change her name on my phone contact to put the Joy Mangrove Advocate. Okay, so Joy,
That would be
let's
lovely.
get back to the conversation. I want you to talk about how important, because if we end this conversation and we do not share how critical the role of young people is, we will
Mm.
not have achieved so much. Because I want a system whereby young people across the globe will come together to contribute their best, their quota, without doing much of the talks and getting involved in the action. So, how what do you think are the things that young people can do with regards to the conservation of mangrove or restoration
Mm.
of mangrove, including wetland and every other aspect of climate change? If you want to number them, you can.
Um, First of all, what can young people do? Wait, repeat your question again. Sorry.
Yes,
I was a bit.
you're on track. What can the young people do in the restoration of wetlands, mangrove, and of course in the fight against climate change?
Um, that's a really good question because first, I think the one thing that we as young people should understand is understand what the problem is. Understand when we talk about climate change, there's a lot of climate denial. There are a lot of people denying that the climate change is
Yes,
real.
of course.
But go ahead, understand what is causing climate change and what are people talking about. If it's about restoration of mangroves, understand what are mangroves, what are the benefits of mangroves to our ecosystem. Understand, because for a very long time, even when I was a child, I would see just this beautiful trees that are submerged in water, but you don't understand what are they. So in order for us to really start propelling is to understand what it is that we are advocating for, yeah. And so once we understand, then we know how we can now advocate for this ecosystem. I advocate for mangroves because I understand what they are. I understand that the benefits they have in our country, in our environment, and in the world. You understand? So that is one of the things. And make sustainable choices. For example, if it's plastic, it just starts with a simple choice. You understand? For example, when every time we advocate about plastics, and at the same time, it is understand that plastic is here with us for almost 1,500 years. So by you taking sustainable choices or um uh, maybe reducing your usage of plastics or your usage or anything that is harmful to the environment, or planting a tree when you cut it down, you understand, then these are the practices that we need to teach in our children. And as an educator, I think I said at first that I am a teacher.
Yeah,
um
sure you do.
um I strongly believe that young children, I am a kindergarten teacher, and these young people so overrated because they have so much ideas. I threw a question to a 4-year old. No, she was 5-year old. And in our school, we have like a huge parking lot and very less trees. And because I was advocating for trees in the parking lot, I decided to ask this 5-year old, do you like our school? And I hadn't, like every time I meet a kid, I want to just pump, environmental
Hmm.
knowledge in them. And I hadn't done with this one. And I asked him, "Do you like our school?" She said, "Our school would have been nice if it had more trees."
Oh wow.
And yeah, and I hadn't even. And she's like, "Which part of school should have more trees?" And she's like, it's just in the parking lot. There's no shade, and I think because every time they go, every time the father comes, the car is always very hot when they enter.
Mm,
So then, so she's always like, "Why are there no trees in our school? We don't have enough trees." Because I think even Mombasa right now, like I'm also a big advocate of green cities and just having more trees in the city and more having greener spaces. And because we live in Mombasa and it is hot throughout the year, we experience a lot of urban heat, and which would be, of course, be helped by if we had like more greener spaces. So for me, it is always understanding what the problem is. So that is what I encourage young people is understand the problem and then see how you can contribute in the solution.
mm. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I think that's a place of knowledge because once we know what it is, we would always have a way of solving or contributing our quota to solving that problem. Thank you, Joy. You've been quite candid with your thoughts this evening, and I do not
Yeah.
take them for granted. Joy,
Okay.
if I were to ask you to talk about your project briefly, what would you say about it?
So our project is the restoration of mangroves, and not only in Mombasa. We when we imagine as an organization, we imagine healthier mangroves in the entire ecosystems,
Mm,
benefiting the country, benefiting the city. So our project has been purely the restoration of mangroves and to connect the people with nature. I like how you had started at the beginning is that we have lost our touch in nature, and
mm,
we forget that we are part of it. We are never apart. We
mm.
are, and I think that is the
Yes,
one thing
yeah.
that we have lost. So our project is that apart from just restoration mangroves, we connect people with nature because a friend of mine once told me that um like restoring the planet, or doesn't have to be like a chore or something that is so hard to do. It can also be fun, it can also be enjoyable, and so that is what we advocate for. Like, restoring mangroves is fun. Let's have so much fun in the mud, let's fall down on the mud,
Mm,
let's
mm.
slide on the mud, and that's what our project really does. So far we have planted more than 20,000 seedlings, and we've been in existence for
Wow.
3 years. And it is a completely women led, youth led organization. And that is what we've really been doing. And there have been some struggles here and there, but consistency is the key, because what drives us is healthy mangroves. I think that's it.
Thank you, Joy. No, you've talked about the fun part of it, and and that should be a great motivation for young people to join your
Yeah,
team and of course the community in seeing that we restore or you guys restore the mangroves in Mombasa. And I wish I can join you someday to play in the mud with you in
absolutely.
Mombasa, so I can imagine the fun, playing the mud. And so, Joy, thank you. I would like to thank you sincerely indeed because I do
Thank
not take
you.
your time for granted, and of course the things you do for nature. I do not take them for granted. Mangroves actually play some very critical role in our ecosystem. They have a whole lot of ecosystem services to provide, including our livelihoods as human. So you and your team, a very big kudos. You've done so much, and I hope you will still do more. And I don't know if I'm to
Absolutely.
ask you, let me just ask you this to raise
Yeah.
advocacy. Just raise advocacy. What would you say what's that advocacy would love to raise in this before we call it a wrap?
What do I what?
What advocacy would you love to raise before we call it a wrap for tonight?
Advocacy. I would like to advocate for um a healthier planet. My advocacy is, let us all live in a healthier planet, because with
Hmm.
a healthier planet, um, we are able
Okay,
to, yes.
The signal is a bit poor. Can you try talking again? I will.
Oh,
Please speak.
can you hear me now? Is it okay?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear better.
Okay, okay. So I think my advocacy is I advocate for like a healthier, cleaner, sustainable planet because that is where we are going. Because what we have done is that we have completely um um I can't say ruin it, but we are in the process of just damaging our planet. But
Hmm,
my advocacy is that we let's us all maintain a healthier planet and let us all advocate for an healthier planet because a cleaner, healthier planet is the responsibility of everybody.
of everyone.
It is also everybody's right because sometimes when I go for cleanups, um a lot of people don't think that they deserve a cleaner environment because sometimes you see plastics all over and you go for cleanup and they are I don't know there's a certain misconception about it but everybody should live in a cleaner environment and everybody should demand that they live in a
Hmm,
in a
hmm.
in a, in a, in a clean and healthy environment. So that's my advocacy for today.
Thank you so much, Joy. And of course, living in a cleaner environment, in a healthier environment, also come with choices and decisions, and that you've talked about exhaustively. Let me take out this time to thank you once again for sparing us your time this night. Thank you so very much, Joy,
Thank you so much for having me.
and do have a great evening. I
Thank you.
hope when next we call on you, you want to come on the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Actually, when I told my auntie, she thought I was actually coming to Nigeria, but I wasn't.
Oh,
But
wow.
more, thank
Don't worry. Someday you will come to Nigeria, and of course, with the things you're doing, the possibilities are all over the place for you to travel
yeah,
wherever you
thank
wish
you.
to. So I wish you the very best, and of course, a pleasant night rest. Good night, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Joy Koech from Kenya, Mombasa, to be precise, who joined us to talk about the restoration of mangrove ecosystem and, of course, the things that are doing in Kenya. Joy happens to be the co-founder of Blue Aid organization in Kenya, and she's been so passionate as a climate activist to the restoration of mangrove ecosystem. She said a whole lot of things, and then one particular thing my takeaway is that everyone should make sustainable choices, sustainable decisions. And if we do that, a whole lot would have been change. A whole lot would have been affected, and a whole lot of change would have been affected towards how we live, how we do things, and how we operate in our respective environments. And do not forget, like I normally say, and like I do remind you all the time, that Mother Earth has its own way of taking care of itself. And if we, the people, keep living in destructive manners, someday, somehow, you never can tell when it might be in your time, it might be in the next generation, but somehow nature may take care of itself and will not be there because nature may eliminate us just to survive. And of course, nature must survive. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been the size of our program for today. And do not forget, we're talking about the restoration of a mangrove ecosystem in a changing environment, in a changing climate. And we know how important it is that we have mangroves because of the series of ecosystem services they provide for us humans as a means of livelihood, as a means of decarbonizing the atmosphere, and all of those things they do for the conservation of preservation of us as a people, and of course to see that we have a sustainable environment to do so. In your little corner, even in your big space, please do your best to make sure you conserve whatever trees, whatever biodiversity you have in your location, and nature has a way of rewarding you, and that is by providing you the basic services nature ought to provide. Thank you so very much, everyone that came on the show tonight, and thank you to our partners and sponsors: Blue Green Initiative for Sustainable Development, Climate and Sustainable Development Network of Nigeria, and Pan African Climate Justice Alliance. Thanks for always making sure that we come alive and come on every other week on Environmental Week. So my name is Edion Sengenen Dunobong, and I wish you a pleasant night rest, even as I pray that you do your best for nature. Please do not forget that the conservation of nature is our collective responsibility. Good night.
This is EAN TV, your one stop TV space for conversations around nature, societal issues, education, business, and innovation.